The dare that changed everything. I never believed in ghosts, at least. Not until that night. It all started as a joke, one of those stupid dares friends come up with when boredom hits. We were sitting on the rooftop of my cousin's house, trading ghost stories and half-empty soda cans, when someone brought up the old hospital on the edge of town. Everyone knew about it. Once a government facility, it had shut down decades ago after a mysterious fire in the basement. Rumors swirled about patients who never made it out, doctors who vanished, nurses whose screams could still be heard if you listened hard enough on windy nights. I laughed it off. It's just a building. Walls, bricks, and a bunch of broken windows. Nothing else. That's when my friend Raza smirked, leaning forward. If it's just a building, why don't you go inside? Spend an hour there. Alone. The group roared with excitement like hyenas scenting blood. I tried to brush it off, but then someone started recording on their phone, chanting, "Do it, do it." Suddenly, saying no didn't feel like an option. My pride was on the line. So I nodded, my voice steadier than I felt. Fine. 1 hour. I'll prove to you all that ghosts don't exist. But deep down, something in my chest twisted. I should have known better. The hospital loomed like a dark scar against the horizon when we finally arrived. It was close to midnight, and the place looked worse than I'd imagined. Windows shattered. Paint peeling, iron gates rusted and bent. The once grand sign that read St. Mary's General Hospital dangled crookedly, clattering against the wind like loose bones. My friends stayed back, their flashlights flickering. Raza shoved me forward, his grin wide. "Remember an hour? Don't chicken out. We'll be watching from outside." I adjusted my phone flashlight, trying not to show the tremor in my hands. Yeah. I'll send you guys a selfie from inside just to prove it." The gates groaned as I pushed them open. The sound echoed into the night as if the building itself woke up to acknowledge me. I stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. A mixture of mold, rust, and something else. Something faintly metallic, like dried blood. The air was heavier here, thicker, as though it resisted each breath I took. The reception area looked frozen in time. Old wheelchairs sat abandoned, their wheels stiff with rust. Patient files lay scattered across the floor, stained and crumbling with age. My footsteps echoed too loudly, and for a second, I thought I heard another pair following just behind me. But when I spun around, nothing was there. I swallowed hard and laughed nervously. Just the wind. Calm down. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick picture, sending it to the group chat. Proof enough, I thought, but no message came back, not even the little typing dots. Strange. As I moved deeper into the hospital, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. My light beam passed over faded murals of smiling nurses and sick children, their eyes seeming to follow me. Somewhere above, a ceiling tile dropped, crashing onto the floor with a bang that made me jump out of my skin. I told myself it was just gravity, just decay. But my chest felt tight, my instincts screaming that I didn't belong here. And then I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Drawn out. Almost like my name. Ade. I froze, my blood turning to ice. My friends couldn't have snuck inside that fast, and besides, this voice was different. Low, hollow. It came from deeper inside the building. I wanted to leave. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. Then I remembered the camera, the recording, the dare. If I bailed now, I'd never hear the end of it. So I forced a smile, though my lips quivered. "Nice try, guys," I called into the darkness, my voice bouncing back at me, not falling for it. But the silence that followed was worse than any laughter. That's when I realized the dare wasn't about proving whether ghosts were real or not. It was about surviving the truth once I found out. And that night, the hospital was waiting. Crossing the rusted gates, the gates groaned shut behind me, as if something invisible pushed them closed. I froze, my heart hammering so loudly it felt like the whole hospital could hear it. When I turned, the iron bars rattled in the wind, locked again, though I hadn't touched them. My friends were nowhere in sight. I pulled out my phone, quickly typing, "Guys, did you close the gate?" The message wouldn't send. No signal, not even a single bar. That was impossible. I'd had full reception just a few seconds ago outside. Okay, I muttered to myself, forcing a shaky laugh. It's an old building, thick walls, that's all. Still, the idea of being cut off from the outside world hit me like a bucket of ice water. The thought of going back and rattling the gate crossed my mind, but my pride held me in place. I had a dare to finish. The corridor stretched before me, lined with rusted doors that hung crooked on their hinges. A thick layer of dust coated everything except for one strange detail: faint footprints on the floor. They weren't mine. The tracks looked fresh, as if someone had walked down the hallway only minutes before I arrived. My throat went dry. I followed the prints cautiously, my flashlight trembling in my grip. The beam revealed faded signs on the walls: Ward A, Radiology, Pediatrics. Each one pointed to shadows darker than the last. The footprints stopped abruptly at a door marked Surgical Unit. Its glass window was shattered, jagged edges glinting like teeth. I leaned in, shining my light inside. Rows of surgical tables filled the room, each one covered with tattered sheets. Something told me not to go in, but curiosity gnawed at me. I pushed the door open. The smell hit first: chemicals, and something that made my stomach twist. I lifted a sheet, half expecting nothing but dust. Instead, I froze. Beneath it lay a mannequin, at least. That's what I told myself at first. But the skin looked too real, waxy and pale, like it had been preserved. Its hollow eye sockets stared straight at me. My hand flew to my mouth as bile rose in my throat. I backed away quickly, bumping into another table. The sheets slid off with a whisper, revealing another body, another. All lined up, all waiting. That's when the whispering started again. It wasn't coming from the hallway. This time it was inside the room. AD, longer, more deliberate this time. I spun around, my flashlight jerking from table to table. No one was there. The sheets lay still, untouched. Yet the air grew colder, my breath puffing out in pale mist. "Who's there?" called out, my voice cracking. No answer, only the sound of something dripping slowly, rhythmically, like water tapping against metal. I turned toward the corner, where the sound seemed to come from, a sink. Rust-stained. The faucet had long since broken, but red liquid still dripped into the basin. Drop, drop, drop. I stumbled backward, crashing into a table. My phone slipped from my hand, clattering across the floor. When I picked it up, the screen lit up for just a second, enough to make my blood freeze. There was a new picture in my gallery. It was me, standing in that very room, but I hadn't taken it. My body shook uncontrollably. That was it. Screw the dare. I needed to get out. I rushed for the door, my shoes squealing against the dusty tiles. Ow. But as I reached for the handle, it slammed shut with such force the glass rattled. I yanked, pulled, slammed my shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. And then, from behind me, the sound of the sheets rustling, one by one. As though the bodies were starting to move, I didn't dare look back. My hands clawed at the door, nails scraping the rusted metal. Let me out, let me out. Suddenly, the door swung open and I fell into the hallway, gasping. The corridor stretched endlessly before me, silent once more. But the silence didn't comfort me anymore. It only made me realize one thing: the hospital wasn't abandoned. It was awake. Echoes in the empty hallways. I stumbled into the hallway, my chest heaving, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone again. My flashlight beam bounced erratically across the peeling walls and broken doors. For a moment, everything was silent, too silent. I forced myself to slow my breathing, trying to think rationally. "It's in my head," I whispered. "Just nerves. That's all." But deep down, I didn't believe myself anymore. I glanced over my shoulder at the surgical unit door. It stood open now, swinging slowly on its hinges, as if mocking me. I didn't dare step back inside, not after what I had seen, or thought I had seen. I needed to find another way out. The corridor stretched forward, the flicker of my light revealing more signs. Pediatrics gives intensive care. Something about the pediatrics ward pulled me in. Maybe I thought it would feel less threatening, less morbid than surgery. Children's paintings still clung to the wall-fitted rainbows, stick-figure families, suns with too many rays. The cheerful drawings only made the place feel worse, like hope rotting away. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as though the walls themselves repeated the sound a second too late. Then, as I turned a corner, I heard something else. The creak of wheels. I froze. The sound was faint at first, then louder, echoing through the hallway. It was the unmistakable squeak of an old hospital gurney being pushed across the floor. But when I swung my flashlight toward the noise, there was nothing. The hallway stretched empty. Dust floated in the air. Then it came again, closer this time. Squeak, squeak. The sound was right around the corner ahead. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but something stronger, morbid curiosity pushed me forward. My shoes scraped softly against the tiles as I crept closer, heart pounding against my ribs. I reached the corner and peeked around. The hallway beyond was deserted, but a wheelchair sat in the middle of the corridor. Aid hadn't been there a moment ago. My light lingered on it, and that's when I noticed there were straps across the arms and legs, like restraints. The leather buckles hung loose, swaying slightly as though someone had just climbed out. My throat tightened. I didn't move closer, but as I stood frozen, the chair moved an inch on its own. Creak. Then another inch. Creak. Slowly, deliberately, it turned until it faced me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My flashlight wavered wildly, hitting the ceiling, the walls, the floor. When I shone it back, the wheelchair hadn't moved again. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was watching me. Suddenly, laughter. High-pitched, childlike. It rang down the hallway, bouncing from wall to wall. My blood turned cold. The laughter wasn't playful, it was mocking, distorted, like a recording played too slow. "Lo?" I called out, my voice cracking. The laughter stopped instantly. The silence was worse. I turned to retreat, but the path behind me no longer looked the same. The hallway seemed longer, darker, as though the building itself had shifted while I wasn't looking. My breathing quickened. That's when I heard the whisper again, but different this time, not calling my name, just repeating one word over and over. "Stay, stay, stay." It came from everywhere and nowhere, crawling under my skin. "Not," I shouted, my voice echoing. "I'm leaving." But the hospital didn't care. The lights on my phone flickered, and for a split second, I saw something in the reflection of the cracked window beside me. Figure, tall, gaunt, dressed in what looked like a hospital gown, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. Its eyes were just black voids. I whipped around, shining the light directly behind me. Nothing. The corridor was empty again. My knees trembled as I staggered forward, past the wheelchair, past the whispers, past the drawings peeling off the walls. I just wanted out. The main exit couldn't be far, I told myself. It had to be around the next turn. But when I reached the end of the hallway, my stomach dropped. The door wasn't an exit at all. It was the entrance to the pediatric ward. And painted across the door in what looked horribly like dried blood were 3 words that made my heart nearly stop. "Welcome back, 80. Echoes in the empty hallway as I stumbled into the hallway, my chest heaving, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone again. My flashlight beam bounced erratically across the peeling walls and broken doors. For a moment, everything was silent, too silent. I forced myself to slow my breathing, trying to think rationally. "It's in my head," I whispered. "Just nerves. That's all." But deep down, I didn't believe myself anymore. I glanced over my shoulder at the surgical unit door. It stood open now, swinging slowly on its hinges, as if mocking me. I didn't dare step back inside, not after what I had seen, or thought I had seen. I needed to find another way out. The corridor stretched forward, the flicker of my light revealing more signs. Pediatrics gives intensive care. Something about the pediatrics ward pulled me in. Maybe I thought it would feel less threatening, less morbid than surgery. Children's paintings still clung to the wall-fitted rainbows, stick figure families, suns with too many rays. The cheerful drawings only made the place feel worse, like hope rotting away. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as though the walls themselves repeated the sound a second too late. Then, as I turned a corner, I heard something else. The creak of wheels. I froze. The sound was faint at first, then louder, echoing through the hallway. It was the unmistakable squeak of an old hospital gurney being pushed across the floor. But when I swung my flashlight toward the noise, there was nothing. The hallway stretched empty. Dust floated in the air. Then it came again, closer this time. Squeak, squeak. The sound was right around the corner ahead. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but something stronger, morbid curiosity pushed me forward. My shoes scraped softly against the tiles as I crept closer, heart pounding against my ribs. I reached the corner and peeked around. The hallway beyond was deserted, but a wheelchair sat in the middle of the corridor. It hadn't been there a moment ago. My light lingered on it, and that's when I noticed there were straps across the arms and legs, like restraints. The leather buckles hung loose, swaying slightly as though someone had just climbed out. My throat tightened. I didn't move closer, but as I stood frozen, the chair moved an inch on its own. Creak. Then another inch. Creak. Slowly, deliberately, it turned until it faced me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My flashlight wavered wildly, hitting the ceiling, the walls, the floor. When I shone it back, the wheelchair hadn't moved again. I couldn't shake the feeling it was watching me. Suddenly, laughter, high-pitched, childlike. It rang down the hallway, bouncing from wall to wall. My blood turned cold. The laughter wasn't playful, it was mocking, distorted, like a recording played too slow. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. The laughter stopped instantly. The silence was worse. I turned to retreat, but the path behind me no longer looked the same. The hallway seemed longer, darker, as though the building itself had shifted while I wasn't looking. My breathing quickened. That's when I heard the whisper again, but different this time, not calling my name. Just repeating one word, over and over. Stay, stay, stay. It came from everywhere and nowhere, crawling under my skin. Now I shouted, my voice echoing, "I'm leaving," but the hospital didn't care. The lights on my phone flickered, and for a split second, I saw something in the reflection of the cracked window beside me. A figure. Tall, gaunt, dressed in what looked like a hospital gown, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. Its eyes were just black voids. I whipped around, shining the light directly behind me. Nothing. The corridor was empty again. My knees trembled as I staggered forward, past the wheelchair, past the whispers, past the drawings peeling off the walls. I just wanted out. The main exit couldn't be far, I told myself. It had to be around the next turn. But when I reached the end of the hallway, my stomach dropped. The door wasn't an exit at all. It was the entrance to the pediatric ward, and painted across the door, in what looked horribly like dried blood, were 3 words that made my heart nearly stop. "Welcome back, 80. Whispers that weren't mine, the cabinets creaked open, one after another, like jaws unhinging. My flashlight lay on the floor, its beams sweeping wildly across the room as the metal doors swung wide, and then I heard them voices, dozens of them, not whispers. This time, not faint echoes. No. Real voices speaking over each other in a cacophony that clawed at my mind. Some were crying, some were screaming, some whispered words I couldn't understand in languages I didn't recognize. And then one voice cut through the rest, sharp and clear. My own. "Help me," it begged. "Please help me," I froze, my skin prickling. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. My tone, my rhythm, even the way my voice cracked when I was scared. "Help me," it repeated, more desperate this time. My legs shook. I forced myself to pick up the flashlight, gripping it tight, and shone it across the room. The burned figure I had seen crawling out of the drawer now stood fully upright. Its skin was cracked and blistered, its jaw hanging loosely as if broken. It stared at me, or rather, the sockets where eyes should have been did. Then, in my own voice, it whispered again, "Help me." I stumbled back until I hit the cold wall. "No, you're not me," I muttered, shaking my head. "You can't be me." But more shapes were emerging from the cabinets. Pale figures with bandaged faces, skeletal forms in hospital gowns. Each one moved with jerks and twitches as though strings pulled them unnaturally. And every single one spoke with my voice. Some begged, some laughed, some screamed. It was unbearable, like listening to 100 distorted recordings of myself all at once. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears. "Stop, just stop," I screamed. For a moment they did. The silence was worse. When I looked up, they had circled me. Dozens of them, their bodies misshapen, their faces hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. One bent down, its charred face inches from mine. Its lips moved, but the sound that came out was not my voice this time. It was my mother's. 80. It crooned softly. "You never left. You've always been here." My stomach flipped. "That's not true," I whispered, my voice breaking. The figure tilted its head, bones cracking audibly. "We remember the fire, don't you? Fire?" The word struck me like lightning. My mind flashed with something, an image I didn't recognize, but one that felt buried deep in me. Flames, smoke, screams. My own hands clawing at a door that wouldn't open. I shook my head violently. "No, that never happened. I was never here." Figures in unison whispered back. "You were. You still are." Suddenly the ground shuddered beneath me, dust raining down from the ceiling. The cabinet slammed shut all at once, making the room quake with metallic bangs. The figures vanished in a blink, leaving me alone again, but not really alone, because the whispers didn't stop. This time, they weren't coming from the room. They were inside me. I heard them crawling in the back of my mind, hissing thoughts that weren't mine. "Stay. Don't leave. You belong here. You never escaped." I clutched my head, digging my nails into my scalp. "Get out of my head," I screamed. But my voice wasn't the only one that came out. Two voices spoke at once, mine and another. Low, guttural, inhuman, terrified, I stumbled to the door. It stood open now, as if the hospital itself had been watching, waiting for me to break before letting me go. I bolted out of the cabinet room and into another corridor, gasping for air like I had been drowning. The hall stretched on endlessly, dim light spilling from cracked bulbs above. My footsteps echoed unnaturally again, but this time, they weren't in sync. I stopped. The echoes didn't. Another set of footsteps continued behind me, growing louder, faster, closer. I spun around, shining my flashlight, and saw myself, standing at the far end of the corridor. Same clothes, same face, same terrified expression. Only this other me was smiling. Shadows behind the curtains, there I was, or rather there it was. A perfect reflection of me, standing at the far end of the corridor. Same torn shirt, same trembling hands, same terrified eyes, except the smile. Wide, too wide, stretching across its face like a crack in glass. My throat went dry. "What? What are you?" I whispered. The other me tilted its head, the grin never faltering. Then, without moving its lips, I heard my own voice echo through the hall. "You don't belong out there. You belong in here." My legs wobbled, my flashlight shaking as I raised it. For a brief second, the beam flickered, and the figure vanished. I almost believed I imagined it until I heard the squeak of shoes against the tile. Closer, faster. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. The corridor twisted like a maze, doors lining the walls. I sprinted past them, too terrified to stop, until I reached a heavy curtain draped across the end of the hall. It stretched from ceiling to floor, yellowed with age, its edges stiff with dried stains I didn't want to identify. I skidded to a stop. Something moved behind it, silhouette. It looked human at first, slumped and motionless. But as I stood frozen, the figure began to twitch. Its head jerked unnaturally, its arms bending at impossible angles. Then slowly, it turned toward me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes through the curtain. The air grew colder, my breath fogged. I took a step back. The curtain rippled. Then a hand, thin, bony, grape pressed against the fabric, pushing outward. The curtain bulged, like something trying to step through. My instincts screamed. I bolted into the nearest room. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, panting, trying to catch my breath. Was in what looked like an old patient ward. Rows of beds lined the walls, their frames bent and rusted. Curtains still hung between them, tattered and stained. Some swayed gently, though no breeze touched them. The silence in the room was worse than the voices had been. I took a step forward, the floor groaning beneath my weight. That's when I noticed its shadows moving behind the curtains. Not one, not two. All of them. Each curtain bulged as if someone stood behind it. Tall shapes, small shapes, some hunched, some twitching. Their movements were slow at first, shifting, swaying, but then they grew more violent. Clawing, pounding against the fabric, desperate to break free. I backed away, flashlight beam darting from curtain to curtain. My pulse thundered in my ears. One of the curtains ripped open. The bed beneath it was empty. But the shadow remained standing tall, impossibly tall, its form darker than the room itself. It stretched upward, its head nearly scraping the ceiling. And then it moved, not walking, not stepping, sliding across the floor like smoke. I screamed, stumbling backward. More curtains tore open. More shadows slipped out, each one faceless, featureless, yet unmistakably aware of me. They surrounded the room, closing in. I darted toward the far corner, pushing through a broken bed frame, my flashlight flickering wildly. My back hit the wall, nowhere left to run. The shadows inched closer, their forms rising and falling like waves, and one by one they stopped moving. Together, in perfect unison, they tilted their heads toward me, and from every shadow, I heard my voice again. But this time it wasn't begging, it was laughing. The sound filled the room, echoing until my ears rang, a pitched, hysterical, endless laughter. My laughter, but warped, distorted, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I dropped the flashlight, clutching my ears. I screamed. The light spun across the floor, its beam landing on the far side of the room. For the briefest moment, I saw something through the chaos and open doorway. Without thinking, I ran. I shoved past the shadows, their cold forms brushing against my skin, chilling me to the bone. Their laughter followed me as I dove through the doorway and slammed the door behind me. Silence. I pressed my back to the door, gasping, tears stinging my eyes. The laughter was gone. The shadows were gone. I looked around. This room was different, smaller, cleaner, almost as if untouched by decay. In the center sat a single hospital bed. Fresh white sheets tucked tightly, a clipboard hanging at the side. I stepped closer, my stomach twisting. On the clipboard was a name, patient, 80. Status. Under observation, my knees nearly gave out. My hand shook as I pulled back the sheet. The bed was empty, but the pillow was indented, as though someone had just been lying there. And then behind me, heard the creak of the door opening. The basement nobody talks about. The creak of the door behind me made my skin crawl. Slowly I turned my head, praying it was just the wind. It wasn't. The door stood wide open, though I hadn't touched it. Beyond the frame stretched a staircase, spiraling downward into darkness so complete, my flashlight barely pierced it. A draft rose from below, damp, sour, and cold enough to sting my lungs. I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct screamed to stay away. But the hospital had been twisting itself around me all night, shifting hallways, vanishing doors. If it was showing me the stairs now, it was because it wanted me to go. And deep down, I knew I had no choice. The steps groaned beneath my weight as I descended, each creak echoing too long, as though the stairwell had no end. My flashlight beam skittered across the crumbling walls, revealing handprints smeared in black soot. Some small, some large, all burned into the stone as though seared by fire. By the time I reached the bottom, the air was thick with the smell of ash and rot. My chest tightened, my breath shallow. The corridor stretched ahead, its walls slick with moisture, pipes dripping rust-stained water onto the floor. Then I noticed the writing. Charcoal marks covered the walls, layered over each other in frantic scrawls. Words, phrases, numbers. I leaned closer, my light trembling. We never left. The fire still burns. 80, don't forget us. My stomach twisted. My name again, written here, over and over. At the end of the corridor stood a heavy metal door, scorched black. Its handle was melted into a twisted lump, but the door itself hung slightly ajar. From the gap seeped a faint orange glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. I pushed it open. The room beyond was massive, a basement chamber, ceiling lost in shadows. Charred hospital beds and broken equipment lay scattered like bones. The smell of smoke was overwhelming, though no fire burned. But I heard it crackling, popping, the roar of flames. And then I saw them, figures moving in the glow, not solid, not flesh. Shadows of people frozen in their final moments, running, screaming, clutching at their faces as invisible flames consumed them. The fire that destroyed this hospital was still here, trapped in time, replaying itself endlessly. I backed against the wall, horrified. My light passed over one of the figures and it turned. Its face was going to burn away completely, yet it looked right at me. And in my own voice, it screamed, "You left us." The shadows surged, their fiery outlines flickering closer. I stumbled away, covering my ears as the sound of wailing filled the room. "No, I wasn't here," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I never lived here. I never left anyone." But the basement disagreed. The flames grew brighter, hotter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Shaking, I pulled it out and froze. The screen lit with dozens of notifications. New photos? All of me. Me standing in the surgical room, me surrounded by shadows, me kneeling in front of the cabinets, me on the bed with the white sheets. But the last photo wasn't of me now. It was me as a child, barely 12 years old, wearing a hospital gown, standing in this very basement. And behind child me stood a nurse. Her face blurred, her hands resting firmly on my shoulders. The caption under the photo read, "Patient returned." I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the screen shattering. The shadows closed in, their whispers rising in unison. "Stay, stay." The heat was unbearable now. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. I stumbled toward the far side of the room, desperate for a way out. My hands brushed against another door, rusted, half hidden in the wall. With all the strength I had left, I shoved it open and fell through. The door slammed behind me. I was in total darkness. And then faintly, the flicker of a single light bulb buzzed to life overhead. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was in a morgue. Rows of body drawers lined the walls, each one rattling, each one whispering my name. Escaping but never free, the morgue was colder than any place I'd been that night. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones, numbs your fingers, and makes every breath sting like ice. The single light bulb overhead buzzed and flickered, barely holding back the darkness that pressed in from every corner. And the drawers, dozens of them, stretching from floor to ceiling. Every one of them rattling, every one of them whispering, 80, 80, duh. The sound crawled across the tiles, echoing like a chorus of insects. My knees threatened to buckle. I wanted to scream, but my throat had locked tight. Then one of the drawers slid open with a metallic screech. A pale hand flopped out. Another drawer banged open, and another. One by one, they began to slide out, their occupants stirring, groaning, whispering. The morgue filled with the sound of bodies shifting in unison, the air growing heavier, thicker, and then I saw it. The drawer directly in front of me slid open. Inside lay a body, my body. I staggered back, clutching my head. No, that's not me, I cried. But the corpse's eyes snapped open, eyes staring right into mine. Its lips moved and my voice spilled out, flat and lifeless. "You never left." The others joined in. Every body, every drawer, whispering the same phrase, overlapping until it was deafening. "You never left. You never left." I bolted for the door. The flashlight beam darted wildly, finding a single metal exit at the far end. My shoes pounded against the tiles as I sprinted, hands outstretched. Slammed the door shut before I could touch it. The whispers stopped. Silence fell so suddenly it hurt my ears, and then slow footsteps, not mine. From behind the rows of drawers, something stepped out. A figure in a nurse's uniform, the fabric scorched and blackened. Her face was blurred, features shifting like smoke, but her eyes cold, hollow pits locked onto me. She raised a finger and pointed at the empty drawer in the wall behind me. "Get in," she said in my mother's voice. My stomach dropped. No, I'm not." Her voice sharpened, overlapping with dozens of others, male and female, young and old, all speaking at once. "Get in." The walls shook, the drawers slamming open and shut like thunder. My head spun, my body trembling violently. I turned, clawed at the door handle, yanked with all my strength. It opened. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just ran. I tore through corridor after corridor, the hospital twisting around me, hallways stretching longer than they should, doors leading to places I didn't recognize. Whispers chased me, laughter echoed at my heels. Every light flickered as I passed, plunging me into stuttering bursts of shadow. And then suddenly I was there. It's the entrance hall. The rusted gates stood ahead, wide open this time, moonlight spilling through like salvation. I ran harder than I ever had in my life. My chest burned, my vision blurred, but I didn't stop. I burst through the gates and fell onto the dirt outside. Cool night air filled my lungs. Silence of the outside world wrapped around me like a blanket. I was free, so I thought. When I stumbled back to my friends, pale and shaking, they laughed nervously, asking if I had chickened out. They didn't believe me when I tried to explain. They didn't see the burns on my arms, faint red marks I swore hadn't been there before. And when I showed them my phone, the photos were gone. Every single one. See, Raza chuckled. Just an old building. You scared yourself. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to forget. But that night, when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I heard it again. Right. The whisper inside my head, you never left. And when I turned my phone over on the nightstand, the screen lit up on its own. A new photo. Me, sleeping in my bed. With the nurse standing in the corner, the haunting of abandoned hospitals wasn't just a story. It was a reminder. Because no matter how far I run, or how many times I tell myself I escaped, I know the truth. I never left.